Okay, I think we're started here. Sorry if anyone was for the brief delay. Um, anyway, welcome to me back to streaming stuff. Not that was any real long latency here. So today I said this is we're fully into my 2006 season. I've gone past the initial photos that I've been doing for the last couple years, getting all the my prehistory redone. But here is the what do you call it? What we're doing is 2006. I'm still using the same crappy camera, and my photo skills and whatever are only marginally better. The only difference is that starting in 2006 is when I really started getting stuff up more and processed better. Not say processed better, but at least they're more in line with the way that I currently get my content out. But still, it still needs to be updated, and I found another 2-day special. This one's going to be a trip to Albany that I took in 2006. Around that time, what I called my Northeast Corridor relationship broken up, and I'd switched to an Empire Line quote-unquote relationship. Whereas a friend someone I knew from the local Philly area was going to school up in RPI. I had a government job with a lot of holidays, and I did not have a lot of anyone to spend it with. I wasn't just going to sit at home and watch the wall. So as I wasn't having to take bi-weekly Northeast Corridor trips probably monthly. I forget. I think it was monthly Northeast Corridor trips to Connecticut. I switched it to more infrequent Northeast Corridor Empire Line plus corridor trips to Albany. Unfortunately, my friend did have a car, so that means I wasn't limited to just going to a university and hanging out there. I eventually started what would become a very long, enduring relationship of me getting him to drive me to places where I could do railfan. What he calls my railfan bullshit. But I'd pay for gas or something. So this is a trip that I really wish I had that I tried to replicate in future years. Because by the time it's a lot of that the New York Central heritage under the CSX occupation, unfortunately got wiped out just as I was realizing the emergency that was involved in what CSX was doing. And I was lucky enough to get up there and get these photos, but like I said, there were way too few, far between, and at least I'm happy for what I did get. So that's why I'm glad to be able to come up and get this rolling. So we're gonna start off at. I'm not sure I don't know what my exact motivation was of like why I picked these exact areas, but I'm sure that I just had my feelers out for stuff that was interesting in the Albany area. So the first place we're going is the once and future Mechanicsville, Pan Am Southern, Guilford Rail System, Canadian Pacific, whatever you want to call it, Mechanicsville Yard. This was formerly a large D&H location. It was an interchange point between the D&H and the New York Central, back when the New York Central had a lot, when they would access that through a Hudson River, a continuation of their Hudson River line from Albany up to Mechanicsville. Later, that was turned over to CP, and it was. Let me restart this. So, I'll get on the pictures in just a second. But there's some history that it's good to know. The whole Mechanicsville, what's today the Pan Am Southern, and was for a bit, with Canadian Pacific mixed in. That was originally the Delaware and Hudson, going from effectively Binghamton to Montreal via Albany, and the Mechanicsville Yard was where the D&H would interface with Boston and Maine. Boston and Maine got swept up into the Guilford Rail System, but oddly enough, at one point, Guilford bought or controlled or operated the D&H. I forget the history with that, but Guilford's what they did with it was that they rationalized the whole network from Binghamton to someplace in Maine, and they rationalized it as their main line and mile-posted it accordingly. So somewhere you had a milepost 1, I think in Maine, not 100%, I'd have to check that out, but I'm pretty sure it was over. Is it over there? Maybe. And it would run, they just re-milepost, re-interlocked everything all the way from there to Binghamton. So today, all the interlockings, all the mileposts still show that Guilford influence, what they called their freight main line. Even though today, the Guilford part went back to only going to Mechanicsville, which is now part of the the Pan Am Southern joint venture. But I'm still gonna call it Guilford. And I guess if CSX ever wins its thing, I'm going to probably just go back to Boston and Maine. So anyway, at some point, this giant, at the point I was there in 2006, the Mechanicsville yard was just a giant empty field. I wanted to go see what was there, and you could see it from the road, and it was just a field. In the decade since I went there in 2006, Canadian Pacific came in and built this giant intermodal terminal with a bunch of additional interlockings, and it was during that Canadian Pacific Searchlight Renaissance that was really cool, but I'm going to get into that as we start going through the photos. What drew me out there was the fact that there was XO Tower. I have this brought up somewhere. It was a surviving New York Central interlocking tower. I saw someone had a picture of it, if I can find the right place. So, the reason that, besides, I could look at maps, but XO is clearly a New York Central tower. You've got the square, you've got the little sunshade, you've got both the built-in nameplate, and then eventually another additional New York Central sign. Probably if we went from telegraph letters to the named interlocking. So that was my first stop. And if you go to this photo here, actually, we'll transition here. XO. Okay, here we go. This is XO in 1979. And let me just quick zoom in on that area. Here we have in Mechanicsville, there's the crossing. There's the towers right there. And we will start with this, which I believe is the signal that I just flashed up here on the screen. I think that was that one there, that mast. So anyway, this is just me getting out of the car and starting to take pictures. So but we'll continue so because this is old and associated, I want to just associate this with XO as opposed to the interlocking that's there at this point in time. And I do have some original photos. I'm going to use some of the old names because they're fine. So at the time, XO Tower was intact but boarded up. It has since been mildly restored. Like the windows are all there, but there's nothing. There's nothing in. There's nothing at the top. The machine's gone. It hasn't been restored to that sense. I think it's either a local NRHS or Model Railroad Club runs it. It's mainly, I think it's used for meetings, maybe a bit of storage. So it's neat. It's a neat photo op, but it doesn't really have any of the real guts of an interlocking tower left, unfortunately. But it's lucky that it survived. There's not a lot of central towers, mainly because of the New York New York State's property tax system. Whatever it is, it included railroads. So railroads, Conrail was it was incentivized to demolish. So that's Mechanicsville D&H. But the question is, why is there a New York Central Tower there? So again, I don't know my whole history of like what's going on there. Like a lot of stuff on this route looks like D&H, but why is there a central tower? I don't know. Maybe did they have some sort of weird like wet? I don't know. I don't know why there's a central tower there. Maybe someone can explain it in the chat. But everybody is saying, but this is saying this is a D&H station. It makes sense that the D&H ran along the Hudson. I said it was Central earlier, but no, I think it is D&H. But I don't know how a Central tower got into Mechanicsville. I guess this is a marker sign for the historic yards. I had way lower standards, it seems, back of what I would take a picture of. Wow, that's interesting. So, blah, 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 blah. Hoosick Tunnel, D&H. 1912 was the third largest yard in the United States, and I'd believe that. And here we have another side view of XO. I'd very much assumed that it probably had some sort of pistol grip, general railway signal pistol grip inside of it. Can I get this into a square? Nah. Just gonna do this. I do have some more recent photos of it, but at least from 2012-ish or so. I'll see if I can find them at some point. I gotta... Like what side is it? Like northbound? I guess it'd be northbound. Next. Yeah, here we have the southbound side. Sorry for the quiet here. Oops. One of the reasons, like I said, one of the reasons I don't do these for my more modern things is because I would, I'd start on about 100 photos of some automatic signal, and you guys wouldn't need. I'd run out of things to say pretty quick. So at the time, the interlocking that was there, and this was. 2006 was still early enough that I was still telling myself, oh, thank God we have searchlights. Those will never vanish because there's so many of them. Little did I know of the great PTC associated purge, and also pole lines and other stuff. So at this point I was not quite. And these are also not that old. I mean, these are modern. They're not rusty. Look, there's no finial on the tube. This is an aluminum tube there, and I'm still used to. This is just after the time. Railroads are still all about saving hardware up until just about this point in time. When I say saving hardware, as in they'd prefer hardware was still slightly cheaper to save hardware and rewire it in a new interlocking than to put in new. But that changed in a hurry. Anyway, I actually have this because I marked these out on Wikimapia decades ago. How many years ago at this point? It says 8, but I think that it maxes out at 8. Yeah, I think 8 is the max because maybe I can check the history of when I put this up here. I know that I did it way before then. Yeah, it just says 8. Anyway, the old interlocking CPF 467. I think that the 0 for the the Guilford Freight Main Line, what they call it, was in Maine. It's crazy to think that like New York to Maine, you can get 467 miles between eastern New York and a place in Maine. It's easy to forget how big Maine is. So this is where it used to be, and I marked this out before it was changed. So I never deleted it. Here's the new interlocking, CPF 468, and then here's the new CPF 467. It's just a holdout to basically allows a degree of yard moves to come out of here, and before they enter Guilford territory. The CPF is Guilford's thing. I mean, it's sort of based on. I'm not sure what. No, the D&H definitely didn't use the CP system. D&H used like call signs. I did a whole post on their interlockings where you can go to the interlocking machine. You'll see 3 different names on it, from D&H original, D&H newer, and then like the CP or whatever put on them. Anyway. CPF just indicates it's part of the freight main line, 467 miles from someplace in Maine. And that's all your Guilford 1980s legacy there. So I'm just this is the interlocking that I'm dealing with, not the new one. And it was simply a junction of what is now called the Canadian Pacific Colony subs, which uses CPO designations, and the the old Boston and Maine route, if that makes sense. And you guys can call out questions if you have them. I'll get there in just a second. So just here we have the I didn't used to put these as I didn't mark these as Guilford because I didn't know what I was doing back in 2006, but now I do, and I can fix that because I had no idea whose interlocking they even were. Oops, sorry, 1 second. Let me just show you this. Like today, yeah, the new CP 467 is this guy. It's just these holdout, cheapo Darth Vaders. So anyway, CP 467, westbound, searchlight. And you can see just the complete lack of anything here. I mean, again, there was no yard. I don't even know if it wasn't even a siding here. So I don't know what sort of operations were being run. I know that it's just, I guess, I don't know where even the Guilford trains were interfacing, were interchanging with CP, because there was just nothing here. And again, I'm sure that someone probably knows where that was happening, but I don't. I mean, they could be running. They're probably running down to Mohawk. Oh, I think they would run down to Mohawk. That's what they would do. I have pictures of a lot of quote unquote Guilford / Pan Am stuff down at Mohawk Yard, right north of Schenectady. So that's what they would do. But they had no business. They didn't give a crap about this. Probably in the sale they got trackage rights. The interesting thing is that the Google Street View of this still shows the original configuration right before it was changed sometime in like 2012, 13, in that time frame. So I was going to bring up some stuff on the Street View to show you guys what the tower looked like today. And the only time a Street View car ever went through this area was like almost a decade ago. Did I even have that? Yeah, I do have the Street View. So there's the station, looking way worse for where the satellite dish is still there. There's that. Yeah, and then this is where the mast would have been. That got cleared out, so that got demolished. I'm so glad I got a picture of that. There's the new Darth heads, which are turned for the new CPF 467. Here we have a much improved EXO tower. New windows, looks nice. And then there's the original searchlights, and they're the new searchlights for the new CPF 468. So I think this is around 2012 or so. Oh, there's a fire department. That's good. When the tower gets set on fire by vandals, they can respond quickly. No, they probably can't because it's volunteer. So there's not anybody actually there. So these would be the, I don't know, colony ones. I'll have to see. I remember this day just was so gray. Let me see which ones these are. Oh, damn it, I can't quite... I'm looking at the wrong side of things. Oh, it depends which side of the things they are. Alright, this is the B&M mast. Oh, it wasn't winter, but yeah, the day was pretty gray though. Here's a nice monarch butterfly I caught. I'm not even catch it. I just happened to encounter while I was out there. What's the date on this? 9/04. So this would have been over Labor Day weekend. Like I said, a lot of government holidays, and Labor Day included, and I just didn't have anywhere else to go. Oops. And there we go, the CPF 467. And like I said, this is the same phenomena I mentioned before. They're not quite to the same degree. You've got a Guilford era stencil, you've got a Canadian Pacific era sign, and there's another Guilford era or D&H era stencil on it. See, D&H police. So it looks like the D&H was using the stencils. Don't know what Guilford would have put on. Alright, that's it for that one. Let's see what we got going on in the chat. I got 12 of these guys. Get you there. A lot of stuff. Oh, abandoned by Guilford. Great. XO. It's a letter O. Yep. Like I said, we're gonna be able to talk about Amtrak stuff when I get to those Turboliners, because that's very on point. Those Turboliners are exactly the same sort of thing that I feel that I'm sure Amtrak had big plans for Turboliners when they made a bunch of announcements in like the late 70s, and we saw where that went. So just FYI, we'll get there. For years, I had a misidentification problem on General Railway signal point machines. I'd always heard the term Model 5A, which it does exist, but is not what most of them are. They go through Model 5A to Model 5H. This is a 5H. They're all in pairs. A and B are a pair, C and D are a pair, E and F are a pair, and G and H are a pair. The pair has to do with hand throw versus non-hand throw. The G's are non-hand throw, the H's are hand throw. The difference between today, you can still buy E's, F's, G's, and H's. The E and F's do not have a built-in motor controller or some sort of additional control circuitry. They have to be handled back at that has to be handled elsewhere. The 8 G's and H's, they do have onboard circuitry. It's located in this hump. That's so you can tell the difference. This long sort of this long part where it's just this is where the detection is. It's longer on the H's and G's. So this is a H because it's dual control. It's got that. Whenever the GRS machines are also a bit of chimeras. They've been modified and hacked up over the years. Like this one specifically. So we have a very, very old switch motor with not the oldest. It's not a 5C with like this square brake on the back, but it does have the authentic GRS logo. This is the drive segment. We have the gearing to actually move the points. This is the detection. The back end is the detection segment where you have the circuit. So those are the detector bars, and then they actuate the switch control mechanisms in this back half here. So this is all passive. This is active. There's your motor. And here again, when I said, Mechanicsville Yard was an empty field, the only thing there was this antenna mast. There was just absolutely nothing where today's intermodal terminal used to be. So it's nice that railroads have done a modicum of, with all their let's destroy yards. It's nice to see that they have made a degree of investment in intermodal capacity. Also, I'll get to that in the other part in a second. Here we have the switch. Didn't quite frame this well. And it's Dutch angled. Again, today there's 2 tracks. Where the switch point is at CPF 468. And you see EXO Tower there in the background to help you orient yourself. This is lower heads on the eastbound searchlight mast. Yeah, this mast was definitely done up in the 80s or 90s. I don't know if it was done up under the GRS ownership or probably CPs. Oh, almost certainly CPs. GRS wouldn't have had money for this bankrupt monstrosity. Yeah, I'd love to know the story behind that. Like why would they? They put together this whole thing and then I can. Oh, damn it! Come on. Oops! No, I don't need that. Sorry. When I got back to doing these in the DN, so a lot of these elsewhere in this D&H land have been replaced, but when I was able to get a lot of the D&H covered. After the New York Central, I missed the New York Central stuff. I got very, very good about making sure the D&H is properly documented. But I have to come out to these locations, and the D&H, and not really CP with it, but I'm not sure what CP's practice is on the D&H. I don't think they. But anyway, the D&H was what I would call was one of the what I call the a three-headed route, or D&H along with the New York Central and to a degree the Reading had a preference for three-headed signals. So they would have no red over yellow. So the Boston and Maine, ironically, was a two-headed route, whereas D&H was three. And that just means that you would have every interlocking signal would have three heads. So all your medium approaches be red over yellow over red. All of your restrictings would be red over yellow. Medium clear, red over green over red. Like everything had three heads. So I'd have to go out when I was properly documenting this stuff. I'd have to roll out, and I would take for a mast like this, I do 6 quadrants, front, back, 2 sides, in each angle. And then at each quadrant, I would do the full thing, this part, this part, this part, and then head 1, head 2, head 3. So and then multiply that times 6, and then occasional, depending on what was up, some amount of the bottom. So and then each interlocking had three-headed masts minimum. It took a little while. So I'd come out to these. These were a slog to do. They still are when I occasionally encounter this type of stuff, but it's a slog. But in 2006, I didn't have the camera capacity or the know-how or the ability, the realization that I needed to document these better. So I would just take the handful of fixtures that you're seeing here. I also didn't know, to make sure to get this stuff when it was backlit, to make sure I wasn't doing that. There's methods you have. The cameras have built-in controls to compensate for this kind of thing, but I didn't really know how to use them, or I wasn't really aware of it. I just wouldn't take backlit photos, not knowing that, hey, you only got one chance to get this stuff. Oops, hold on. You can fix it in post to a degree, but still. And these would be the only photos I ever took of this specific style of this. Oh shoot, damn, screw that up. 4, 6, 7. Back to XO. I'm sort of just all over. See, yeah, at this point, I'm not like, oh my god, searchlights, how amazing. I'm like, oh, there's some searchlights. I'll just get some pictures. They're super common. I think this is what I would just... I think this was my reference photo for the tower, or I just name it XO. Yep. For towers, I always try to have a reference photo. And a little bit of the old pole line, which, like, why is the tower cockeyed but the pole line isn't? Ugh. So if we go back to the North American interlockings, let's see if I can find that pole. There it is a little bit right there. Nope, not there. Not there. So we can see that pole a little bit. Lot of stuff coming in there. Must have been like must have done some yard ops or something. To have all those wires, cables, communication cables coming in. This interlude is an M42 Duster anti-aircraft gun located at the Schenectady Airport Air Museum. See, actually, I remember this stuff. So anyway, we're moving down to the Turboliners. Someone noticed. So that's Albany International. So as you drive away from Mechanicsville. Let's go to the railroady map. There's Mechanicsville. There's your Mechanicsville yard. There's this giant junction complex up here in sort of, what is that? Ballston, Crow's, hold on. Whatever area that is. That's where all the lines come together. You have a Y between the Mechanicsville line and the main D&H. So there's one leg of the Y, two leg of the Y, three leg of the Y. Then you have this other track that sort of meanders on here, and that goes down. That's your New York Central / Conrail interchange track. It goes down to Rotterdam Junction, CPRJ. We're going to get down to CPRJ later. Anyway, this one picture came from the Schenectady County Airport. Schenectady County Airport's notable for the Stratton Air National Guard Base. They are responsible for flying the LC-130 planes that support the Antarctic mission because they got the skis on them, and there they are. Kind of far away from Antarctica, but that's how the funding cookie gets distributed. They're like most small airports. There's some sort of aviation museum. And they had at the time, I think that they had the M42 parked outside. Not sure where that is today, but maybe it's somewhere else. Let's see if I can find it here. M42. Yeah, I don't know where that one went. I can go. I can reach for it. Research where that went later, but I'm not gonna drag you folks through that. But my friend knew about the place, the aircraft place, so we just like rolled by. I think that M42 would have been like right there. See, there's the UH-1. You can see the parking spot where the Duster used to be. There's the tank tracks for it. Yeah, see, there's the chopper. There's the radar stand. And it's not there anymore. So anyway, Empire State Aerosciences Museum. Yeah, that probably got. I don't know where. It was probably out of scope for their collection, so it probably got bought by some vehicle collector for money. Okey-doke. Next. All right, here we're getting into the Turboliners. These are not the ones that like are involved in that long-running like battle between New York State and Amtrak. These were the ones that, so I don't know the whole. So I'm likely going to get that wrong with. Let's see what the deleted places. Where were they? Okay, that's where they all were. So there's like several generations of Turboliner. They're French look. The original ones were fully French. The ones that these are were Americanized, made by in part by Rohr. The original French ones, they ran out in the Midwest and they just immediately like broke down. The main problem with the Turboliners, they just didn't seem. None of these. It's weird. Like you have something with a gas turbine, but the gas turbine only generates 1,000 horsepower. Like why? What's your point? Why? You know. Like, what? Come on, Europe. Even the UAC turbo trains only had a really small amount of horsepower. It's like, you have a gas turbine. Like, you should be pumping out, like, 6,000 horsepower with that, you know? But they made these little lightweight, rinky-dink things to, you know, it's like, you could have 1,000 horsepower diesel and have your little lightweight train. Like, those trains are just lightweight. They're not, the turbo doesn't really matter. Anyway, in the Midwest, they fell apart, so Rohr made a ruggedized, Americanized version that ran on the Empire line for a bunch of years in the 80s and maybe the 90s, up to like 110. Some of them, there was a plan to refurbish all of them up to 125. They ran for like a week. Amtrak realized that the air conditioning was unmaintainable, dragged them to New Jersey, parked them, and then had a decade worth of lawsuits. These were the ones that were not rebuilt. So they were rebuilt by an outfit called Super Steel. Super Steel plants here. It's kind of a New York State workfare project. They built the DM30s for Long Island Railroad. You know, I'm not saying that all American-made stuff is bad, but these people did not know what they were doing. EMD at the time didn't give a crap about, you know, making like 50 locomotives for LIRR, so they contracted out with Super Steel. And Super Steel, because capital area, State Senate Assembly, this is basically State Senate Assembly President Joe Bruno's district. And he's the one that you might know for being in jail, and I think dying. He's the reason we do have the new Albany Rensselaer rail station that I always say that it bears. I put his name on there because he was responsible for it. So Joe Bruno wanted the work in his district. These people happened to be in his district. They got the jobs. They didn't do a good job on the one Amtrak got, and for years, the remainder were out back. Hold on, I'm gonna. Oh, that's right. So I heard about them and I decided to go out there. So this is, again, you can tell they look way more rugged than the French ones. They got like some, a bigger nose for hitting things. But again, it's sort of just they're still hobbled by this sort of very French European, no rigid structure body with way too many windows. And again, why would you go to all this trouble and have a rinky-dink like 1,000 for 2,000 horsepower on your train set when you probably needed 4,000, 5,000, or 6,000 horsepower for the train set. So this is 2139. I'm glad I went out there and got these pictures because they sat there for an amount of time and then got scrapped. And I think that the other ones are currently in New Jersey, but they're on track to be scrapped. And for anyone who was wondering, it wasn't just Amtrak's spite. It was the work was not done right, and the HVAC system was the Achilles heel. It was just not only broken, but it was something that Amtrak quickly found to be unmaintainable. That there was no way they could ever get it to work, and they couldn't run basically sealed hot trains. And you can see, so at the time, some of them were out, and the majority of them, this was another power car, were wrapped. So I don't know which number this is. I'm sure the fanboys out there probably know which wrapping was under, what one was under literally which one of them was under these wraps in which location. But I don't know, and I don't really care. Gives new meaning to the raised, like, it's like, ooh, it has, the Coca-Cola wrap. This, I'd make a joke with, like, what company has, it's like the See, I don't even know what company has an all-white logo. You can be like, oh, it's an advertising wrap, and make the appropriate joke there. So let's see what people are saying. Blah, 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 D&H, blah, 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 Turboliner. Yes, Roar and the first generation DC Metro cars. I actually, if you guys really, 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 really want a fun detour, my friend who lives in Georgia that I'm seeing next week via the Carolinian and a combination of the Carolinian and the Crescent. She lives in Athens or near Athens, and at one of those points, she's a lot less amenable to me like dragging her out places. But I want to get some pictures on the Abbeville sub of the classic signals. So that involved driving down through, she's where was it? So we were going along Atlanta Highway, and we passed. Is that it? Yep. Near this airport, of course, we passed the actual Roar Industries, birthplace of the Metro. And I didn't know it at the time. I went past the building, and I was only when I was sort of going over my trip after the fact, did I realize that was Roar, that was the Roar Industries plant. And today it appears to be doing aluminum auto racks. So good for them. Trinity Rail Group. I've heard of that. And their back lot is full of auto racks. So there you go. For anyone who was wondering why aerospace companies were making transit cars, including Boeing Vertol, part of it, you can, people can assume that they were looking to be space-aged and lightweight and aluminum and forward-thinking. It's because after the Vietnam War, they all had all their aerospace contracts canceled, and it was designed to be a sort of a soft. They didn't want to have all these companies go bankrupt, because when you go from having all your having to make pop out Hueys because they're all getting shot down to not needing them anymore because they don't get shot down, they needed work to do. So that's why Boeing and Roar got transit contracts, and they didn't. I think the BART and the DC cars were okay, but they did have an amount of problems. I think, but whatever it is they did fill out their full life. Even the Boeing LRVs lasted 20, 30 years. not well, but they did. Here we just have a full train set on one of the storage tracks. Let's see if anybody has anything to say before I resume. The Boeing Vertols for Chicago L worked out pretty well, at least I think. The 2400 series cars. So okay. So the reason I named this set Albany Circles because we drove up to Mechanicsville, then down to Super Steel, then to CPRJ, and then finally CPVO. It was all just one day's drive. Now the question, I think these are Turboliners. That's the thing. There's the Turboliners and the Turbo Train, and you got to make sure you get which one's right. RTL Turboliners. The original ones were the RTG Turboliners. Blah, blah. I actually put the whole steel. 2 completed train sets, 2003. Oh, they apparently they were derailing. Oh, fun. Both trains were pulled in 2004. Put in Delaware. Settlement with Super Steel. Terminated the contract. They were auctioned in 2012 to a scrap firm. So there you go. Here we have 2281. So hold on. You got the door note. You got traps on these. I think that the original French ones would have been low platform only. They don't have 4-foot platforms in France. Of course, I wanted to get some pictures of the trucks. I think that these only had one powered truck per power car. Again, really, really weird. Like, whatever. Oh, so anyway, this is where I want to get to these were dual mode. Whatever. Where would they even fit the dual mode controls for these things? These are probably operating. When they were operating, they were likely running the Grand Central. So this is where we can talk about the current a little bit. We can stay topical. 1 second. With the planned, so Amtrak was announcing its stuff with Siemens again. It's no surprise that it's been clear from the beginning that Siemens is the only one offering off the shelf like solutions here. Amtrak's already ordering their new long distances. They're being delivered. Amtrak, the Midwest states are ordering. Everybody's ordering the single level stock, Brightline, whatever. So that's there. That's off the shelf. So it's clear that Amtrak was going to find its Amfleet replacement and Horizon replacement from what's on the Siemens catalog. This whole announcement of like train sets and dual modes and all this stuff, it's like, hey, great, but I really feel that it was just like the Viewliners, where they were saying, hey, we're going to do all these like bag dorms and we're going to do all this other stuff that's going to let us, suddenly when the order came through, you start seeing the changes. Well, no more bag dorms. Oh, no, we don't want that many diners anymore. And then suddenly they're just pumping out the, and then you're getting, it all comes out in the wash. So for example, everything they're saying about the battery ones is just ridiculous. It makes zero sense. I mean, again, this is something to sound like battery locos, just like the Long Island Railroads are trendy, and they're just trying to like make some waves with the battery crowd because they want their chunk of the infrastructure funding, and they want to make sure that they sound like they're saying all the right things. So, for example, all this battery, except for freight, where it actually makes sense to have battery locos, and passenger it doesn't make sense at all. For example, this is all an example, but example of why I know this is bullshit. The HEP load on any American train of more than like one or two cars is sufficient to absorb the dynamic brake load. I know this because the ASC 86s and the ALP 46s, neither of them have dynamic brake grids. How can they dynamic brake? Goes into HEP. Because in the United States, you're either air conditioning or you're heating, set 12 months a year. And that's well over 500 to 1,000 horsepower worth of load for the lights in HVAC that you can just dump all that into, and that you don't need any regen management, you don't need capacitors, you don't need flywheels, you don't need load balancing. It's there to run the AC. The Aero 3 MUs. Got this upgraded in the 90s because anything with an inverter can do it. It's you can just run the inverter both ways for free, and they immediately serve. The Aero 3s got this upgrade in the 90s, and they saved 10 to 20% of their electric bill right off the bat from the regen, and it's free regen. So also, I'm sure that Amtrak's probably going to get an amount of dual modes, but at the same point, if you're buying dual modes, the whole Empire line has 12 kV catenary out to the mouth of the Empire Tunnel through the Empire interlocking. Okay, you get. Why are you making a weirdo battery fleet that's going to have its own independent, problems and have to be maintained separately for like 10 locomotives? You would just assign it the same old dual modes and put some wire over the Empire line. and you can do a running change and find a way that they can do running changes. Come over the Inwood Bridge or something. Maybe they have to, I know that the current ALP 45s have like a 2-minute change. But again, why would you buy a bespoke micro fleet when you can just, that has no service, no efficiency purpose at all, when you can just put in the dual modes? Okay, one second. If you go and look at some of the diagrams and some of the hype, basically what they're doing is they're buying an amount of coaches, they're buying an amount of locomotives, they're buying an amount of cab cars. The Midwest services already are going to eat up 30 to 40 of those train sets, especially if they do service expansion. If you start going or other parts of the country, maybe Pennsylvania, the Downeaster, Empire service, you add it all up and you sort of get very, very close to the full number. So it's not enough to really replace NEC services. They're mainly replacing the short haul P42s. So I think as we get closer to it, even if they're going to buy some number of dual modes, you're going to see even as they get delivered, expect that number to change to reflect some sort of reality. Like I highly doubt that they're going to replace the ASC 86s to have a bunch of lower powered dual modes to work in electric the full time. I mean, NJT is using its ALP 45s in electric mode, but I don't think they wanted to. Like, they're doing that because for reasons, but it's sort of like I'm sure that NJT was not expecting to do that. Like, the fact that they are just means they have a lack of dual mode need. What is this? This is the super steel plant. I'm not quite sure how to label this. What did I call it back in the day? I bet I deleted that. Oh, I think I just deleted that one because I didn't care. Yeah, I deleted that. I think I label things with an Albany. Stuff that's in Albany. Okay, here we are at Rotterdam Junction. Let me just see if I had any comments from my rant there. Yeah, no, and I can say like that HEP load. So a lot of the stuff are things people tell me, but HEP load is one of those cases where I can immediately prove it because the ALP 46s and ASC 86s do not have grids. In fact, I've seen the manual and diagram. My friend pulled out the ALP 46 manual and with a full block diagram of what's in the locomotive. Like, it's not detailed, but it has like what goes here. No grids at all. And it's like, well, how do you can't have dynamic braking without grids. The power has to go somewhere. So it's going into HEP, which is great. It's like this amazing, like in Europe, that's the thing with people don't get about Europe or certain subways. I think there's issues with rapid transit has so much need for HEP. Has so much dynamic, so much generation. I don't know, like, I think I think transit might be slightly different in how much HVAC it needs, but at least in the U.S., on heavy rail, you can get away with it. Now, maybe it's not quite as efficient, but again, it has to be because they don't have grids, so it has to be as effective as all. It has to be able to absorb all the dynamic brake load. Now, there are things inside the locomotive that I think also absorb the dynamic brake load. They're not like real resistor grids, but there's stuff inside. I know that there's stuff inside that can do a little bit of that. It's sort of like in the PCCs, the drum controllers were doubled as the brake grid. So there might be something inside of it, inside the whole like part, whatever's in the locomotive that can absorb some of that too. But I'm not entirely sure what that is. Could be running the compressors, the auxiliaries. I don't know. Anyway, here we are at CPRJ. And I need to go look through some of this. So CPRJ is on the Selkirk branch. I'm looking for switch numbers here. Because Conrail would put them on. And I see it on one. Because otherwise I don't know what they are. Oh, come on. What's going on here? Alright, whatever. Go. Damn it. Let me think. I don't think I have any interlocking diagrams for this. Multimodal ways does not have Albany division. Right now I'm just trying to get what I call like a waypoint. See, I can see that's 3. Okay, that's 3. So the other one's going to be 1, and then we have one additional switch, probably like a 5 and a 7. So, okay, this is going to be 1. So I know how Conrail numbers its interlockings well enough that from even one data point, I can figure it out. So Conrail sort of went with a generary signaling style, but I would say it's their style, but they would, no matter who was interlocking the plant, they'd use it. Conrail likes to number them even odd, so you have your signals are even, your switches are odd, and the switches are numbered sequentially in a direction through the plant. So if that's 3 over there, this is going to be the 1. And if this is the 3A, that means the other side is going to be 3B, so this is going to be 1B. And then if there's no paired, there's 2 other switches, that would be 5 and 7. So it can be different, but after doing this enough and working with the Pittsburgh line, I know how Conrail numbers its stuff enough to just get by on like a waypoint. So anyway, CPRJ is located. So Super Steel was served by this DNH interchange track. It crosses. This is still used by CP for interchange stuff. It says it's CSX. Maybe CSX took it over. I don't know. But this is where the interchange is. There's a interchange yard all in here. And then at some point, this is where they get to pick shit up. CPR, so the Selkirk branch started getting resignaled even before the PTC thing. RJ was left intact, but due to a variety of me not being with it, I never really went back, and that was dumb. So it all got resignaled between now and 2009. Not when I say now, I mean the now of my photos. And I really wish I went back to RJ. I just didn't. I was like, oh, I've already been there, even though I didn't do a good job. So anyway, CPRJ. This is the 1B switch 5H plus interlocking in the. This is east-west, so this would be in the eastbound direction. The Selkirk branch was the New York Central's bypass of the congested Albany terminal area built in the 1930s. Prior to that, there were 2 swing bridges in Albany. You had a passenger bridge and a freight bridge. The current bridge used by Amtrak is the old freight bridge because the station used to be right there. Your passenger bridge trains would cross over. The station was right in there. A lot of that area in the yards was replaced by the I-787. But in the 30s, that was becoming a major problem. So, you had Boston and Albany would go here via the Post Road into the Albany Monster Complex. Your river line would go straight up into the Albany disastrous complex. But what they did is they built this. It wasn't the 30s. It was the 1920s. They built this giant cutoff project that went from CP187 past CPSM through the CPSK, Selkirk Yard, which you all, I'm sure you know about, and just cut the corner all the way up here. And I think there might have been something in there. There was a thing of the west of Hudson. There was a main line on the south side of the river that was part of the PRR tried to build. Oh, that's right. The PRR had this thing. So this line might have partially existed coming up the west side. The West Side Railway might have used it. I'm sorry, I'm sort of blathering on here. But anyway, this is part of the Selkirk branch. And the Selkirk branch allowed Conrail, that became the primary Conrail route, and allowed Amtrak to take full control of the old main line. So that's why you got 110 mile an hour on there, just because it's like, was able to become a dedicated passenger route through Schenectady. And they had 100 mile an hour operation up here in the late 70s. Anyway, that's the story of the Selkirk branch. And I really regret not getting out to... In fact, I should get out to CPRJ more, even if it has been resignaled. I think that's the old RJ Tower. This is when we go back to my tower thing and see if I can find it. Come on, give me Rochester Junction. Riverside Junction. Oh, there it is. There you go. Yeah, see, it's that XO style New York Central type tower. Very, very old GRS Model 2 interlocking machines. Again, yeah, really cool picture. So that was what was there, but because of New York State's property tax, it is now a foundation. This is dragging on, but we're getting close to... How many have I done? Right. Yeah, this is one of those days I just have a lot to talk about. Oops. So, yeah, the main thing I'm worried about Amtrak is less about them replacing the sprinters and putting on weird, like I'm glad that the transit people, the transit advocates are having a shit fit, mainly because like Amtrak trying to go crazy dual mode with the more expense and the weight is probably not the best thing. But I'm frankly way more worried about Amtrak's growing airline mentality than anything else. So we're gonna have to see how that goes. For example, the reserved seating, at least in the business, in this stuff, is this weird thing that's not only reduces capacity, but I think it's there to drive early booking and shut out people with class upgrades. And by driving early booking, and then you combine that with booking and cancellation fees, it basically turns into this terrible. One second. It turns into this just very antagonistic user model. That's why I fly Southwest, because they don't do that. Where if your airline is trying to make money based on people's cancellation, if that's their major revenue, as opposed to actually getting them to their destination, like that's just, you're not, I can see how that's profitable, but at the same point, you're not doing it. Like, that's not helping anybody. And it's a real shame to see Amtrak going down that route. I mean, they are, and it's one of those things where, as someone who has choices, so I used to take it a lot, but circumstances have forced me to drive the I-95 corridor more. But even when I could probably take more Amtrak, but I don't, because their cancellation and all that policies are hostile. And that's not like I'm taking a stand. It is, I will not only pay more, I will then risk paying more, double more, to take the train. So it's like it already cost me more to take the train, and then like suddenly I'm facing the chance of cancellation fees if any of my plans change. So thanks, I'm going to drive. No cancellation fees. Good job, Amtrak. Now in their defense, the trains were pretty crowded. So we're going to have to see how this shakes out. I think that if people in general, I mean, it's all going to be, if Amtrak has crowded trains, then they can go and they can put on whatever policies they want, and if people keep riding, that's I guess that's the way the free market works. But we'll have to see. Now, it does torque me off a little bit that, especially when they're getting public funding, that they're if you're getting public funding, that's one of those things that you might want to have a little bit better. Be more in the public interest. Like, there's a reason you're getting that subsidy, and maybe it's to not treat your customers like shit. It's to, yes, I know that private car things, might have some amount of impact, but at the same point, that's a policy choice that federal funding wants to continue. So anyway, just by the way, this is, I think, the 5 switch looking in the interlocking towards the west. Actually, this is like the same exact view, not exact view, it's a similar view to that. All right, that's that one. I'm just going to do, I only have to do 3 tonight. I don't have to do 4 because I only have 70 something photos. So I'm going to cut it there. I have exactly 36 today and 36 tomorrow. So I will see you then, but let me just see if we have any questions here. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure what their policy was like. I think that Amtrak needs to work with them more. Like, I don't mind charging them a heck a ton, and maybe they shouldn't just let them have to get put off at every little station. But for example, like they weren't having Whitefish. Montana is like a private car set off. It was like, oh, anywhere you have to have a stop for 20 minutes. It's just, doesn't even matter. Like, I'm pretty much done here. Doesn't even matter. Whatever. I'm done. Like, I have nothing more to do, so I'm just gonna respond to the questions, and I'll come back tomorrow when everything works. So, I'm just gonna say, yeah, I don't know what's up with the private car thing. I think it got a little bit better, but like, especially during COVID, they should have really embraced the private car community. They could have made bank just being like, hey guys, we're running empty trains, so for the next 6 months, whatever, we're going to take you wherever you want. Like, go crazy. Amtrak, again, keeps people employed, whatever. So I'm going to call it here. Thank you so much. Sorry if there was a few minutes of blankness at the end. I'm not sure how much that lasted. But I'll see you tomorrow with the remaining 3 sets. So have a great day, and hopefully we won't have to get into too much letter writing and whatnot in the future to make Amtrak behave. So anyway, and I said I'm going to be on long distance next week, and check my Twitter for. I did long distance last summer, but check my Twitter in case there's any comments on how that works. So I'm going to log off, and I will see you.